Let's break down those numbers now with David Shapiro from Sasfin. He joins me now to look at those numbers. So, David, we are still in record territory, and it's interesting because the JSE or the local bourse didn't react this way during the first lockdown, and now we are seeing it at record levels, still holding on to some of those impressive gains we've seen over the last few days. What could be those major catalysts that are keeping the JSE in the territory that we're seeing?
It's been mainly mining shares. You know, if you break down what happened last week, we had gains in some heavyweights like BHP, Anglo American, Glencore. Those were up 17, 18, 19, 20% in 1 week, and they can influence the index quite dramatically. The other issue is that the rand deteriorated quite significantly. Remember, last week we were around about 14.50. We're now suddenly 15.60. So the depreciation that we've seen in the rand has kind of underpinned or cushioned some of the fall. So largely it's been the upper end of the market. It's been the big mining shares. Process, Naspers came to the rescue today. I think Process up around about 4%, Naspers in similar territory. And they have big weightings in the various indices. So I think that's really what's given the market some kind of support. Outside of that, the markets have been very choppy with our industrial market all over the place. And today we saw banks coming under quite a bit of pressure. So thankfully, it's minus.
Right. Now, before we get to some company news, David, the president is set to address the nation tonight in a family meeting, and it's anticipated that a harder lockdown may be introduced. Could what comes out of the president tonight have an effect on the momentum we have been seeing on the stock market?
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. You might not see it in the indices because those are influenced by offshore businesses like Process and AB InBev and British American Tobacco, who are not directly involved in this economy. But I mean, outside of that, we've had quite a lot of activity in mid-cap shares, in smaller industrial shares, or and even in financials. So the market has been building in a turnaround. It might not be a dramatic turnaround in the economy, but if we impose further lockdown, you're going to find a lot of the retailers, a lot of the financials, companies coming back on the strength of that, because it does bring the economy to a standstill. It brings spending to a standstill. So there's no doubt if we go up higher levels, it's going to impact. I think the one thing we're waiting for quite eagerly is to see how retailers did over the holiday period, and especially with the lockdown of their liquor outlets. So still a lot of news to come, but I think further it is going to hurt us.
Speaking of turnarounds, David, as we get on to some company news, Marion Roberts, possibility of it returning to profitability, scoring quite a nice contract in Australia to process gas. Should investors be excited about this? Are there more contracts like this to come for Marion Roberts?
Funny, their order book has been quite good. They've got quite a nice, healthy order book. The problem is that there's still many legacy issues that are dragging down, or there's still elements of their business here that are kind of offsetting what might happen in the future. But you can't just brush aside a contract like that. Of course, it is good news. Murray and Roberts today are much more construction miners than, more a mining business than they are construction. But this is it's a very nice contract, and hopefully it will have some impact. It didn't move the needle on the shares today, so I think the market's a bit skeptical about where we are and what's really happening in the underlying economy. It's going to take a lot to get them to move.
Right, and then a final one for you, David. WBHO looking to sell its Australian business. That prospect has fallen through. But more interestingly for me, David, that business in Australia was doing quite well for WBHO, a significant amount of profits coming from there. So why look to sell it?
I don't know what the motivation behind that was, whether they needed money perhaps to finance some of their business. Remember, the Clough deal that you spoke about in Murray and Roberts is also in Australia, and it's been a reasonable source of profit for our construction companies because there's been no business here. But again, the market didn't respond too negatively to it, perhaps on the basis of what you say, that it has been giving fairly decent profits. And the reasons are rather obscure, that it's the Australian government that stopped the deal going through on security grounds. So obviously there's question marks about the people who want to buy ProBuild. But there again, it's I don't think the fallout has been too bad.
David Shapiro, as always, many thanks for your time and this evening.